zenyu, huyu ni Kasuku kutoka Nairobi na mimi ni mwanaharakati na kikundi la RSL, yani Revolutionary Socialist League. Leo hii ningependa kuzungumzia kuhusu ubeberu, yani imperialism. Ubeberu ni nini? Ubeberu ni mfumo wa kiutawala wa nchi kubwa zinazokusanyika kwa lengo la kunyonya kiuchumi nchi nyingine. Nchi hizi huwa na nguvu za kijeshi na kisiasa na zinaweza kulazimisha nchi ndogo kutekeleza matakwa yao. Mfano ni Amerika. Amerika inajulikana dunia mzima kwa jinsi inavyotesa na inavyolazimisha nchi ndogo, especially hizi za Kiafrika, kutekeleza matakwa yao. For example, sahi tuko na kitu inaitwa the Free Trade Agreement. Amerika inalazimisha Kenya kuingiza plastiki nchini, to support Israel. Kwa sababu ya nini? Imperialism, ubeberu. Lazima tupigane na ubeberu. We must fight imperialism. We have the right for freedom and self-determination, and we must fight for our sovereignty. Venye Bob Marley alisema, get up, stand up, fight for your rights. Hatuwezi kubali kunyanyaswa na Amerika, kunyanyaswa na Uingereza na nchi zingine kubwa wanaotulazimisha tutekeleze matakwa yao ama watatuumiza kiuchumi. Huo sasa ndo ubeberu, and we must fight imperialism. Kumbuka Peter Tosh alisema nini? Equal rights and justice. Get up, stand up, fight for your rights.
Hello everyone, my name is Maghanga and I belong to the Revolutionary Socialist League, which is a Marxist-Leninist organization, and we're based in Nairobi, Kenya. Imperialism is that stage of capitalism where the world has been brought under the control and total dominance of the largest multinational corporations, giant trusts, and monopoly combines. When we talk about imperialism, the thing that comes to mind most frequently and most easily is, as Thomas Sankara taught us, that imperialism can be seen to manifest itself in various ways, ranging from the clothes that most people wear, to the food that most people eat, to even the movies, even the songs that most people listen to and watch. Basically, we can see that we are under the domination and control of financial oligarchs based on the global north. And we can see that these corporations and these oligarchs are basically being represented and being backed by their governments. Anti-imperialism is therefore the struggle of the people of the world, of the masses of the world, against this state of affairs. When we organize and when we come together and oppose these manifestations of imperialism, these are examples of anti-imperialist struggles. The RSL can see these manifestations of imperialism in particular and capitalism in general as the greatest obstacles to humanity at this point. And what we strive towards is a unified and protracted struggle among the people of the world through the various organizations that are present in various parts of the world to organize against imperialism. We therefore commit ourselves to working together with these organizations and with all the people of the world who share this purpose. Down with imperialism and abash imperialism.
Abash.
Forward with unity.
Forward.
Thank you.
Viva Socialism, Viva! My name is Comrade Richard Gurira from United Food and Allied Workers Union, Zimbabwe. Imperialism is a system practiced by one country or a group of countries to extend its power or influence by forcing itself by either negotiation or through the use of war. Imperialism is a thuggery. It creates wars of destruction for it to benefit from the war. Imperialism being so rooted in capitalism is anti-worker. It promotes regionalism, tribalism, and racism so as to benefit from the divisions arising from such practice. Imperialism must fall, for it creates hunger, poverty, disease like COVID-19. It must fall, for it is corrupt as it steals from the innocent. It kills the innocent through wars of aggression. Viva socialism, viva! Down with the capitalism, down! Imperialism will fall.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pasi Igunzi from DR Congo in Bukavu town. I'm a member of Congo Love organization. This organization which is just have the vision of Pan-Africanism and internationalism under the banner of socialism. I'm here to talk about imperialism. Imperialism, as for me, is oppression and exploitation of men by men. It means that some people just dominate others by exploiting their labor force, their profits, and all their energies as far as economy is concerned in general. So, and as a picture, when someone talks about imperialism, the symbol that comes in mind, the picture is a world which is controlled by the minority of people who have force and money. They have richness, and this is also just opposed by what we call anti-imperialism. Anti-imperialism is a counter-hegemonic bloc of socialist fighters. These people who think about the working and the oppressed class of people who needs their liberty and their rights to be respected. Among all the songs about revolutionary fighters, revolutionary artists, I'm really impressed by the song entitled 26th July. 26th July is my own composition. I was inspired by the revolution of Cuba, especially by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, the day that people commemorate this revolution of Cuba. This country really inspired so many countries to be freed, to be liberated from colonization, for neo-colonization, neoliberalism, and all this kind of imperialists and capitalists, really difficult, and capitalist dominations and capitalist strategies and tactics to overestimate other people and other nations. And in my local language, my Swahili, in Swahili they call imperialism, they call it kugandamizwa. So kugandamizwa is the relevant word of imperialism. Also, in my organization, for example, we can see imperialism when we are looking for funding, and we want just to show our vision, when sensitizing people, when organizing some activities. You will see that they come with money just to deviate our vision and our mission. Thank you very much. I'm really impressed, and thank you for this opportunity to listen to me. Thank you.
Amanla comrades, my name is Christina Mfanga from Tanzania, in the eastern parts of the African continent. I work with the Tanzanian Socialist Forum. Well, since we are about to mark the week on anti-imperialist action, it's also important to give a brief account of how imperialism is manifested in various ways in different parts of the world, and how do that particularly for my country, Tanzania. So, well, as we're all aware that imperialism is that domination or the extension of authority of one country over another, whether by military force or through political or economic dominance. So Tanzania, just like any other African countries, is also dominated in all those spheres by the imperialist countries. And such domination, as I said, is seen first through the economic area, where we have a lot of foreign capital flowing in our country, and that is practically seen through the multinational companies investing in our country in different sectors, being it in the mining and quarrying sector, where we have a lot of Canadian and other imperialist nations companies in that sector, being it in the construction industry, where different construction projects are being carried out by various foreign companies, being it in the agricultural sector, where we have different investors from the foreign countries, and generally how the multinational agribusiness companies are trying to influence the agricultural sector in our country, and different other sectors of economy where we clearly see the dominance of the foreign capital. But also in the economic area, there's a lot of influence from the Bretton Woods institution in terms of how our policies are made, how the laws should look like, so as to match with the needs of the imperialist companies, whether it being through flexibilizing labor laws to create the cheap labors they want, and other different stuff. Politically, well, it's also saying how the imperialist countries are struggling to dominate the political sphere, are struggling to make sure that they determine who gets into power and how they do serve their interests. And currently we're heading to the general elections, and there are ongoing campaigns where we can clearly see how the imperialists, through their different agents, are trying to influence who should come into power, whether by supporting the opposition parties or by supporting the current regime to remain in power. And all those kind of imperialist manifestation are also directly manifested in the day-to-day lives of the common people on the ground, or of the working class, if I may say so. I'll specifically speak of the economic area. Well, you cannot speak of the foreign capital flow in our country without actually speaking of how the common people, the small-scale peasants, are actually dispossessed of their land. As we speak, there are rampant land disputes in different places of the country because of how people have been dispossessed of their land and actually turned into cheap laborers into the farms of those who have actually taken their land for investments. The same is also seen through exploitation of labor in different factories or in different mining areas and in other different sectors where our people are working as laborers in those countries. As I mentioned earlier, there's influence of these institutions in our policies, how these laws actually work to first curtail the freedom of association of the workers, so that they can't even not try to challenge such unequal relations within the workspace. But it's also seen in how people can access different services they need for their life. Speaking of the policies I spoke, we are all aware of how such policies came with the commodification of different social services. So we have, on the other hand, all the services that require to be purchased, and on the other hand, the majority of people who are unemployed, and those with employment also with a very little income that cannot support such kind of a lifestyle. So all these kind of things are a manifestation of how imperialism is in day-to-day affecting our people. And of course, this has not been without resistance. There has been a historical and continued resistance of the people and also of the government from time to time, depending on what kind of the ideology has been dominating or has been running the government, so to speak. So I can actually trace the resistance historically, well, since the time of, say, the Maji uprising, because for me that also was challenging the colonial domination, so to speak. And there came a time after independence where we saw our then government trying to challenge the economic relations, at least by trying to establish an alternative path, well, through the Arusha Declaration, which was also as a result of people's resistance who saw that they're not even benefiting from the independence after the colonialists had gone. But of course, the alternative path was also crushed with the coming of the structural adjustment programs in 1980s, as we're all aware. So, but the people did not stop resisting. We have had also different resistance from different sectors of the working class, whether it being those who were resisting the privatization of different sectors of economy where they were working, or whether it being those who were resisting the direct effect of the commodification of services like education, for instance. There were a lot of resistances from the university students and the related. So such resistance have continued to date, even when the regime has been crashing down such kind of resistances. People have been trying to come up with different ways of resisting and creating alternative path. And speaking of alternative path, I can quickly give an example of the grassroots women who are currently in solidarity with the Tanzania Socialist Forum, who have actually trying to challenge the orthodox financial institutions by starting their own credit and association groups from which they borrow and run them democratically in a way that has actually helped them a lot in doing away with the exploitation of these financial systems. So from the government, well, currently there has also been time to time attempts, if I may put so, of trying to challenge these economic relations, however limited. So the current regime, for instance, we may see how it at least tried to challenge some of the agreements, speaking of the EPAs, in which our government refused to sign in 2016, speaking of some of the mining contracts which the government tried to put an end to them, and as a result we've seen a lot of cases in the international courts where these multinational companies are trying to also react against that. We have also seen the attempt of the government to articulate our permanent sovereignty over the natural resources through the enactment of the new mining laws, which of course have also been resisted so much, whether by the court actions I've spoken or by different pressure and statements from the imperialist countries. As we speak, there has been a recent statement by the US Congress to the same effect. So all these shows how much capital also reacts towards different attempts and limits them from going further. Well, of course, the other limitation why these attempts are not going very further is due to the truth that the government, or also the current regime, is not grounded in the revolutionary ideology. So, of course, there's no way these attempts could go any further to that extent. But since the people have not stopped, and they're still resisting through different ways. It is my firm belief that imperialism will not just be challenged partially, but it will come a time where the working class will claim their power, and will not just be saying down with imperialism, but we will really bring it down. Amandla.
Michael Neligwa. I'm from MVIWATA, which is a national network of smallholder farmers in Tanzania. Today I would like to talk about on how imperialism manifests itself on the day-to-day life of us as smallholder farmers. And in this I would like to point out in different sectors that imperialism actually manifests itself. First of all, I'd like to speak about on the sector of land. Then I'll be pointing out on how imperialism manifests itself on the seed sector and also on the climate change. First, I would like to speak on land. On land, actually, imperialism are the big drivers of the agenda to acquire land for their own benefits. And this agenda is pushed by transnational corporations, and thereby they drive the agenda by forcing the enactment of policies and laws and legislations actually that favors their interests. And when those laws and policies are implemented into our country, actually big portions of land are being set aside for the investors, thereby leaving we smallholder farmers aside. We actually come into conflict among us as smallholder producers, be it pastoralists, be it farmers. Actually, we come into conflict between us. So while imperialists, or by the name of investors, they are profiting our natural resources, having big portions of land, and leaving us aside in poverty. On the other side, I'd like to say on how imperialism manifests itself into seed. As I said about land, they're actually big drivers of agenda of formulating new policies, laws, and regulations that favors their interest and not the interest of we as smallholder farmers. And for this, I'd like to point out that the agenda is actually to drive out our sovereignty in management of our indigenous knowledge, be it on seed, be it on farming systems. Thereby, they push the agenda to make sure that we abandon our indigenous knowledge of saving seed, of actually having our own ways of managing our farms, of our own ways of managing our inputs. Thereby, they push the agenda to make sure that we follow their steps by actually having their industrial inputs, having their industrial seeds, of which they deprive our sovereignty. They put us in a trap that we can no longer have a sovereignty to practice our farming systems. Therefore, that manifests actually greatly into our day-to-day life. You can see big actors, be it government officers, different stakeholders, they are speaking on that agenda and leaving our agenda of actually protecting the indigenous farming systems. The other one I'd like to speak about the issue of climate change, on how it manifests in a day-to-day life of we as smallholder farmers. And in this, I'd like to say that there are fake alternatives that are being proposed to us as an alternative to climate change. This actually has actually led to loopholes into different laws and policies that have been formulated just to favor the agenda of transnational corporations. And in this, actually, I'd like to speak about the climate smart agriculture as an alternative actually to combat the climate change. And in this, actually, we as smallholder farmers will say that we have our own systems of which we believe that they are the true solutions to the issues of climate change. They are the trusted solutions, and we own those systems of which they actually make us sovereign, because we do not depend. So we come to realize that actually imperialism deprives our self-determination, and actually it sabotages our initiatives to emancipation, emancipation economically, socially, traditionally, and also in all issues of environmental protection, protection of indigenous systems, knowledge, and all that. So we come to realize that actually, and we are aware also that even to our neighbors, we know on how actually imperialism has manifested itself, be it to Zimbabwe, to our comrades in Iran, in Palestine, in Venezuela, Cuba. We know on how these sanctions of imperialists actually have accelerated mass sufferings of the working class. So we are aware of that, and we still stand together, stand still with all comrades around the world to fight against imperialism, and we say, Amandla!
Salut l'équipe, moi c'est Daniel Mabulu Nsimba depuis Kinshasa en République démocratique du Congo. Je me joins à vous pour participer à la semaine anti-impérialiste en répondant à des questions qui nous aident à comprendre la nature nuancée de l'impérialisme aujourd'hui. Alors, je m'en vais déjà à la série de questions-réponses en me posant la toute première question. Qu'est-ce qu'est l'impérialisme? Ou comment doit-on comprendre l'impérialisme maintenant? L'impérialisme, c'est l'esprit de domination morale, psychique ou intellectuelle chez un peuple ou ses dirigeants sur un autre peuple. L'impérialisme, c'est la domination. L'impérialisme, c'est le stade suprême de cette domination, voire le stade suprême du capitalisme. Deuxième question, quels sont les symboles qui me viennent en tête lorsque je pense à l'impérialisme? Il y a deux symboles qui me viennent en tête. Le tout premier symbole, c'est une pyramide qui a au sommet, donc au sommet, l'impérialiste, c'est où il se situe, et à sa base, le peuple, où l'impérialisme situe le peuple. Le deuxième symbole qui me vient en tête lorsque je pense à l'impérialisme,